What's up, everybody? You boys are back. What's up, Tom?
Nothing, man. It's Monday night. We're back on a normal recording schedule. Another Monday down.
Another Monday down
And
is
another
right.
Monday closer to football.
That's right. Another Monday closer to football. Preseason is starting. Officially, it started right Thursday with the Hall of Fame game, but we got our first full slate of preseason games starting up. I think there are some games Thursday night. I know the Jets are playing Friday. I don't know when you're. Oh, you know what? We got to talk about your boys. I know you've been busy the past couple hours. I'm sure you saw the news come on over, right? Quinnen Williams getting a new contract extension. 3 years, $105.9 million. What are your thoughts on Quinnen? Because after you talk about Quinnen, we might have to talk about how your team's choosing to spend money right now.
They had to re-sign Quinn Williams. There's like no way they could have made this deal for Quinn Williams and then let him walk after 2 years. So I was just having this debate with some Cowboy fans that like this is a move they had to make. I know Cowboy fans are like applauding Jerry Jones for it. And yeah, maybe he got ahead of it, so he does deserve a little bit of some kudos in the fact that this didn't get dragged out like other contract extensions. But like if they hadn't re-signed this guy who was easily the best player on their defense last year, it would have been an abject failure of a trade. We'll see how it pays off in years to come, right? He's 30. How old is he now?
I don't even think he's in his 30s. I think he's still like 28,
29 then? Is he 29?
But yeah, I mean, you have to justify that trade. You can't just trade away a second and a first round pick and then Quinnen's there for 2 years and he just walks out.
I'm aging him too. He's 28. He'll turn 29 in December of this year. So again, like you're going to 31, 32 is about the time you'll have to try and figure out what you want to do with him next. It makes sense. He's in his prime. He's one of the best players at his position. I guess that can lead us into the next question about George Pickens and what this likely does for George Pickens. But if it's Pickens or Q, I'd rather lock down the stud defensive interior lineman versus the wide receiver.
Well, my question for you is going to be, so Quinnen's contract is averaging out to about like $35 million a year. Micah Parsons is 47. There's only a $12 million difference there. Would you rather have Quinnen or Micah Parsons still?
I mean, I've said this for a while. Like, I wish Dallas kind of went for all of them. I mean, I would tell you right now, I'd probably rather Quinnen Williams over Micah Parsons.
What? Over Micah Parsons?
I loved Micah. I think he's a really, really good player. I think the flaws for Micah Parsons are way bigger than people who don't watch him week in and week out can see. And that's not me saying that he isn't impactful on what he does. I think Quinnen Williams helps you as a pass rusher and a run stopper. I think Micah Parsons is an elite edge guy, one of the best pass rushers in football. But if I can get Quinnen Williams for $12 million less, he's arguably the best at his position, and I can take that $12 million and spend it elsewhere. I would tell you I'd probably be okay keeping Quinnen Williams and trading Micah Parsons like they did.
Quinnen is one of the best run defenders at defensive tackle, I would say, in the league. I'm just curious what he graded out at last season here. Oh, okay. So this is per PFF. His run defense grade of 91.7, ranked first at his position. So yeah, and he's always been really good. Even when he was with the Jets, he was very good against the run. Again, though, I mean, from a pass rushing standpoint, he's not a big pass rush guy. I mean, he's probably like in the top. Let's see, where did he grade out last year? 34th. So it's still good. But, I mean, I don't know. I'd rather just have Micah. I want the guy who's going to get you like 12 sacks a year, which I'm pretty sure Micah Parsons has done, right, every single year of his career, I think. I think he's like,
I mean, sure. And anybody who says that, it makes a lot of sense. Quinnen Williams led defensive tackles and pressures last year. So this is still a guy that has impact when it comes to rushing the passer. And again, that $12 million, if utilized properly, can like get you potentially a player or two or extend another guy. Now, I say this now, and 3 months from now, 10 games into the season, I might be sitting here saying, I wish we had Micah Parsons. I get why Dallas traded Micah Parsons. I don't know what this does for George Pickens. If you find a way to keep George Pickens and you re-sign Quinnen Williams, and I think it's a no-brainer, you trade Micah Parsons for those two guys. I lived with Micah for a long time, and I watched his football team win absolutely nothing with him. That's not his fault, but I'm okay with them going in another direction. And we'll see. We'll see if this one pays off.
Now, what's this going to equate to getting Pickens signed here, right? Because you got a lot of money now invested in Quinnen. There's a lot of money invested in Dak. CeeDee Lamb's another one. I mean, how much, like, if you give George Pickens, we'll just say $37 million a year, something like that. Like, you got 4 guys who are eating into a lot of the salary cap. I think during the offseason, you guys are probably going to have to do a lot of twerking with these twerking, a lot of tweaking with these contracts you guys have for some of these players, because This is a lot of money here that Jerry's going to have to work some cap gymnastics here to get everybody under the cap. I mean, of course, right, the cap's going to go up another, what does it go up every year? Seems like 7 or 8 million at least every year the cap goes up. But yeah, the Dallas front office got to check their debits, their credits, their financial statements, make sure everything fits in under the cap here because, yeah, there's a lot of money dedicated to just some specific player there, man.
If you're serious about winning, you need to keep your good players here. So Quinn Williams is signed for another 3 years. I don't know if I guess it's technically 4 because he had 2 years left on this deal. So you have Quinn Williams for another 4 years. I don't know what CD and Dak's contracts are like. I would very much like Dallas to just go forward in this little window you've created for yourself with Dak, with CD, with Quinn Williams, with everything else you have, some of these young guys on rookie contracts, and just throw shit at the wall and see what sticks. And if 3 years from now your cap is completely screwed and you didn't win, at least you went for it. Dallas usually doesn't do that. So I don't foresee George Pickens staying. Like, I think Pickens is going to leave. Maybe they try and franchise him again, see what Pickens says, and then you trade him. But I don't think there's a likelihood that he re-ups with Dallas. But we'll see. I hope I'm surprised. And if I was Jerry, I would just do it. Just go for it. Sign to the contract, backload all of these deals, kick all the money down as far as down the road as you care. And if 5 or 6 years from now you're in cap hell, I'll deal with that if A, you put a roster out on the field that you think can win a Super Bowl, and B, if you actually win one. Like, if you won a Super Bowl, I could not care less what they do in 5 years. So I'm curious. I don't expect them to sign Pickens, but we'll see.
How about this? Who would you rather have, Pickens or CD at this point? Would you be okay signing Pickens and trading away CD?
I'd rather have CD because I think he's done it I think he's done it more consistently over Pickens. Like, no disrespect to George Pickens, but he's coming off of one like really elite year, and that's last year with Dallas. CeeDee Lamb's done that a handful of times, showed you that he can be that guy. If Pickens has another one of those years, I think then the conversation has to be had. But I also think CeeDee Lamb makes George Pickens better, right? So would George Pickens be that effective and impactful without CeeDee Lamb? That's another question.
Let's see, what other news can we talk about? There's been a lot of injuries lately. I'm sure you've been following specifically some offensive linemen. I saw Laramie Tunsil. He tore his triceps the other day in practice.
That is a massive. Like, you can argue that he's Washington's best player.
Yeah, especially on the offensive side of the ball. Yeah, definitely their best player.
Loss for them.
And remember, we did our Commanders preview. I think both of us, I know I was. I'm pretty sure you were too. You were pretty high on the offensive line coming into this year being their best unit on offense. And then for him, it sounds like he's going to miss the majority of the season. Folks, check out the video I posted on how I would fix that issue right now, what the Commanders are going to do at the left tackle position. But yeah, man, just an absolutely brutal loss. I mean, I had them coming in 4th anyway in the division this year. They're probably going to finish at least one, I'll say at least 1 to 2 wins less now than originally we thought. I think I had them at like a 6-11 or something like that. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if it's. I mean, I know they just signed Stephon Diggs too. I don't think we talked about that either since the last time we spoke. Stephon Diggs now, he's on Washington. Again, we spoke about it during our Commanders preview, how they needed to add another solid wide receiver to the mix there next to Terry McLaurin, next to Chigakonkwo, the tight end. So Diggs will help them there. But yeah, just a massive loss. Laramie Tunsil getting hurt and potentially being out for the season. And then today, too, the Lions, Cade Mays, he got hurt, their center. Some kind of injury in his wrist, they said, so he's going to miss some time. Again, the Lions were another team with offensive line concerns coming into this year. Now they're going to have to replace their center for at least, sounds like, the first quarter of the season.
And they were really hopeful that he was going to come in and make an impact. And
yeah, he was a solid player last year.
That's a pretty big loss for them.
Yeah, he was really solid. And where did he play last year? Carolina. And that's who we're speaking about tonight, folks. The Carolina Panthers as we start our NFC South preview. So, right, so we got 2 more divisions to go through. We got to get through the NFC South and we got to get through the AFC North, and we'll do that all before opening night, which is, 4 weeks away now, Tom? Right?
Coming. Yeah, it's weird, right? Because it's 3 weeks of preseason, and then there's like a week off before the season starts, I think.
Yeah, you're right. Yep, right. Yeah. Usually like the Labor Day week, they're off, and then... Right, that's the big college football week typically. That's week 1 of college football, and then the NFL usually starts up the week after. So let's get into it. These Carolina Panthers. So if you recall, last season, the Panthers go 8-9, coming in first place in the NFC South, even though they did lose 3 of their last 4 games to end the season. But due to the state of the NFC South, which Tom, right, you and I have brought up on occasion on this pod about how bad it was last season. They won their division, and they even hosted a home playoff game on Wild Card Weekend, which they would lose to the Rams by a score of 34-31. They were very competitive in that game, though, and the young players on the Panthers, they got their first taste of postseason football. So the Panthers entered the 2026 season, should have a sense of confidence as they took a big step forward last year under Dan Morgan and under Dave Canales. So the question is for the Panthers this year, can Carolina take another step forward, show that last season was not a fluke, and that they are a franchise going forward that will be competing for a playoff spot year after year? So let's get into the coaching staff here. So Dan Morgan's general manager in his third season. Of course, he was a original first-round pick of the team back in 2001. He was a really good player too, man. Linebacker until injuries really took a toll on him. The head coach is Dave Canales, his third season as well. Career record of 13-21 through 2 seasons here. The OC is Brad Idzik. He's in his third season. He's coached with Canales in previous stops. They were together in Tampa Bay. They were together in Seattle. And though he's the OC, Canales calls the plays. The DC, the defensive coordinator, is Ejiro Evero, who's had this role since 2023. And before that, he was a DC in Denver as well. And then their special teams coach is Tracy Smith, who's been in this role since 2023. So since Canales has gotten there, it's the same guys, the same coordinators. They've kept their whole staff together through 3 seasons here with the Panthers. Let's go through their major departures this season. So this is everybody who's left the Panthers. So Ashawn Robinson, Cade Mays, who we mentioned earlier, Rico Dowdle, DJ Wonnum, Christian Roseboom, Austin Corbett, Yosh Nijman, Hunter Renfro, and quarterback Andy Dalton was traded to the Eagles during the offseason. Those are all their major departures. Major additions we'll really get into here. So they've spent a lot of money this offseason, the Panthers. Jalen Phillips, the defensive end. Devin Lloyd, the linebacker. Rasheed Walker on the offensive line, which we'll get into the offensive line because there are some serious concerns right now to the offensive line. A very good offensive line, but they do have some injury issues right now. Kenny Pickett was signed quarterback. You probably saw him in the Hall of Fame game the other night. Sam Martin, the punter, Luke Fortner, center, John Mechie, A.J. Dillon. They also re-signed a lot of their own players here. So Brady Christensen, the guard, he was re-signed. Nick Scott, James Mitchell, David Moore, Travis Gibson, Isaiah Simmons. So they did try to keep most of their complementary players together on the team. And then speaking of their draft class here, first round, Monroe Freeling, the offensive lineman. Second round was Lee Hunter, the defensive tackle. And the third round pick was Chris Brazzell, the wide receiver, who unfortunately will be out for the season. Tom, what did you think of the Panthers offseason?
Panthers were a weird team for me because looking into this, I thought I would like them a lot more. And maybe as we get into position groups, some of the injuries will factor in why I haven't maybe liked them as much as I expected to. I mean, last season they went 8-9. They won their division. They lost a close playoff game to the Rams. They kind of went for it big this offseason, but it's still a team that was 2-5 versus playoff teams last year. And like a handful of those games were not close. Like they lost by 16 points to Jacksonville. They got blown out by New England in New England. They got blown out by Buffalo at home. They lost by double digits against the 49ers. They lost by 17 points late in the year to Seattle. So for a team that you look at what they did in the playoffs and you're like, maybe they're close. When you really delve into the numbers, and we'll get into that when we talk about their offense and their defense, they weren't really that good on either side of the football, but they clearly feel they're close. They bring in Jalen Phillips, big money there. We talked about that. Devin Lloyd to shore up maybe one of the weaker positions that they had on the defensive side of the football last year. Rasheed Walker, who kind of seems like a godsend that they've signed right now with the issues that they have on their offensive line injury-wise. And Luke Fortner at center, Nick Scott at safety. They kind of attacked the market. And really what they lost, I feel they can replace it, maybe outside of Robinson. I like their draft. I like Freeling. I think there's going to have to be patience with Freeling, and I think they knew that. You know, they signed Walker and then drafted Freeling, and I don't think the expectation is for Freeling to play a lot as a rookie, or that was the hope. Now he's kind of being thrust in a position where he's probably playing first-team reps a little sooner than they want. There's been no talk of kicking him inside the guard, so I think they're going to take the patient route with him. Lee Hunter's a really solid nose tackle who should contribute. Chris Brazzell II, it's just a killer injury for this football team. I think they were hoping he could come in and have an impact with a wide receiving group that We'll talk about them in a minute. And then Will Lee and Zakai Wheatley from Penn State are two more guys that they drafted that could impact them. It's an interesting roster, which we'll get into in a little bit. But yeah, I thought this is a football team that I'd probably like a little bit more than I do right now.
Yeah, we'll get into the offense because the skill position players, we'll read them off, folks.
It's a lot of projecting. It's a lot
It's a
of like,
ton of projecting on
can
the
this guy or this guy or this guy take a step?
right. And I think that there's going to be a couple guys that need to take a step here for this
Yes,
team to eclipse that
100%.
8-win total that they had last season. So let's get into their offense now. So the Panthers offense last year finished 27th in the NFL in yards per game with 295.6. Passing yards per game, they were 26th. Rushing yards per game, they were 19th. Points per game, they finished 27th with 18.3 per game. They committed 21 turnovers last season, throwing 12 interceptions and losing 11 fumbles. So, yeah, this was a bottom third of the league offense, at least statistically last season. At quarterback, Bryce Young, entering his 4th season in the league after being the first overall pick in the 2023 draft. His first season was not good at all, as you recall. Really struggled, was sacked 62 times that season. But since Canales has taken over there, Young's protection has gotten better, and even he has gotten better. He took a step forward in 2024, and he took another step forward last season. So last year, he threw for 3,000 yards, 23 touchdowns, 11 interceptions, and the Panthers' offensive line has done a much better job protecting him, as I mentioned, over the past few seasons. He was only sacked 27 times last season. He himself, though, still needs to cut down on the turnovers. But the Panthers, they exercised his 5th-year option, which will keep him under contract through the 2027 season. But Young still needs to show more to the Panthers to warrant them giving him a second contract and being the long-term quarterback here. A very similar situation to C.J. Stroud in Houston. They went back-to-back picks in 2023.
Who do you feel better about? Very quickly, not to sidetrack. If you had to pick Stroud or Young right now, who do you feel better with?
I would say Stroud just because
Yeah,
I
me
like his
too.
weapons better.
I agree with you.
Backup QBs here. Originally, it was Kenny Pickett and Haynes King. King is dealing with an injury right now that he suffered during the Hall of Fame game. So the Panthers just signed Kyle Trask the other day. So he's going to be filling in there for King for a while. At running back, so Rico Dowdle's gone. He takes his 1,000 yards out the door with him. So Chuba Hubbard ran for nearly 1,200 yards and 10 touchdowns in 2024, which led to Carolina giving him a 4-year, $33 million contract extension. But last season, he split carries with Dowdle, and he suffered a calf injury early in the season. So this led to Dowdle getting most of the carry. So the hope now is Hubbard's back. He's the undisputed RB1 right now. Hopefully he's healthy. They're hoping he can regain the form that he had 2 seasons ago. Backup running backs here are Jonathan Brooks, A.J. Dillon, and Trevor Etienne. Yes, not Etienne, Etienne. I'll call him what his brother says their last name is. So we'll see if maybe one of those guys works their way into RB2 here in Carolina behind Hubbard. At wide receiver, so here's some question marks here. Oh, I shouldn't say a question mark for this guy because this guy was the offensive rookie of the year. Tetairoa McMillan enters his 2nd season. He caught 70 passes for 1,014 yards and 7 touchdowns. So at 6'4", 212 pounds, he's a big body target that can win the jump balls. And the Panthers are hoping he can continue to make strides to becoming one of the better wide receivers in the league. Opposite of McMillan, Jalen Coker, so he was an undrafted player out of Holy Cross in 2024. Yes, Holy Cross gets a shout out on this pod. Only about 400 yards receiving last season, but he did have a huge playoff game against the Rams. He caught 9 passes for 134 yards and a touchdown in that game. So he's going to get a chance this season to earn a bigger role in this offense. One guy we need to talk about is Xavier Legette. Was a first-round pick in 2024. Another big body wide receiver who the Panthers need to get going here. Like he needs to be more consistent, Legette. He's a guy who, if you look at him, he'll have a good game and then he basically disappears for weeks on end. And then he'll have another big game again. And it's kind of like, oh yeah, I forgot this guy's on the team. So the depth here includes John Mechie, Jimmy Horn Jr., who actually had a pretty solid game in the Hall of Fame game, and David Moore. Chris Brazell, as mentioned earlier, he's going to miss the season as he undergoes knee surgery. At tight end, so The tight end room might be the worst in the NFL. This is not a good tight end room at all. Tommy Tremble, Notre Dame shout out. He's the starter. He's more of like a tight end too, though. He shouldn't be a starting tight end in the league. The Panthers, I think, are hoping that Jatavion Sanders is their guy there. They're hoping that he can show something this season. And then behind him is Mitchell Evans, another Notre Dame guy. But like I said, on paper, this is probably the worst tight end room in the league. And then the offensive line, which I really like, but they're going through some injuries currently in camp. So last year they gave up 35 sacks as a unit. Basically, they were a middle of the pack line. If you do all the resources and read about them, they rank typically like in the 15 to 20 range. Let's talk about the tackle position. I'm just going to get into it because right now their tackles are really beaten up right now. So the left tackle is typically Ika Mekwonu. He was a first-round pick in 2022 who's been okay so far in his career. And the Panthers picked up his fifth-year option last year, but he got hurt during that playoff game against the Rams. He tore his patella tendon in his knee. The Panthers are optimistic he will play sometime this season, but there's no timetable for his return right now. So it looks like Rasheed Walker, who they signed during the offseason, he's going to play at left tackle. Walker comes over from Green Bay, where he was not good at all last season. He graded out as a bottom-tier tackle in the league. Now, at right tackle, it would typically be Taylor Moton, who was a second-round pick in 2017. He's played in Carolina his entire career. He's one of the best right tackles in the league. He graded out as a top 20 offensive tackle overall in the NFL last year, but he's currently out indefinitely due to a blood clots issue. So the expectation is first-round pick Monroe Freeling. He's going to start at right tackle heading into the season. And due to the injuries at both tackle spots, the Panthers don't have the best depth right now. So I would expect them to be sniffing around free agency, add some more bodies to the offensive line room. At left guard is Damian Lewis, who played really well last season. His pass blocking and run blocking were both really good. He was only credited with giving up 1 sack last year. He recently did suffer, they're saying, a minor calf injury in camp. He's not expected to miss much time, though. The center is Luke Fortnor, who comes over from the Saints on a 1-year deal. He, again, a guy who graded out really well as a pass blocker, and his run blocking was pretty good, too. He was a top 20 center in the NFL last season. The right guard is Robert Hunt. He signed a big contract in 2024, but last season he tore his biceps in week 2. And he needed surgery, so he missed basically the whole 2025 season. But the hope is he's back this year and he's healthy, and he's going to regain his Pro Bowl form from a few seasons ago. So the offensive line is being really tested right now due to the injuries, but I really like this group, and hopefully some of these guys can get healthy as soon as possible. What do you think of the Panthers' offense?
Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head with a lot of this offense. I mean, if we start with Bryce Young, he's coming off a career year, yards, touchdowns, completion percentage. Looked like maybe he was taking steps in the direction, again, of at least being a serviceable NFL quarterback. I don't know if Panthers fans want to hear that. He was the first overall pick, but at least serviceable enough that you feel you can win games with him and compete in playoff games. Like, he played pretty well in that game against the Rams, all things considered, but you mentioned it, like, he's got to cut down on the interceptions. He's got to cut down on the takeaways. His career high in interceptions with 11 last year. But year 2 under Dave Canales was much better. It's easy to forget he was benched in the 2024 season because of his play, and now he's kind of showing flashes of, hey, this is a serviceable guy who can at least compete with us. But he does need to take a step this year. You know, you mentioned it. They picked up that 5th-year option, so he really has 2 years to show that he can be the guy, but really a year if he wants to get some type of extension. And we're not talking necessarily big money, but for a guy who's playing on a rookie contract, I'm sure he's looking for some type of pay upgrade. And if he wants that, he needs to have a really good year this year. Now, as we get into skill positions, I don't know if he's set up the best to do that this year, but with basically the same group, did well last year. So maybe all of it comes together and he can help elevate the offense even more. When we talk about their running backs, they lose Rico Dowdle. Finn mentioned it. They're a leading rusher. I do think they have a number of guys that they're excited about. Chuba Hubbard is the guy who's going to get the chance first. Finn mentioned it. Split carries last year, then got banged up. But he had a stellar 2024 season. So can he get back there? Jonathan Brooks is still like floating around with his football team. Former 2nd-round pick out of Texas. Easy to forget how impactful he was at Texas. He blew his knee out his senior year. If he doesn't do that, he's probably a 1st-round pick and probably taken in the first 32 picks, which isn't something we see a lot with running backs. Was selected in the 2nd round and then retore the ACL his rookie year. So, yeah, it's been a rough go, but he's had a pretty good camp so far, and I think Panthers fans and their front office and coaching staff are hoping that he can take a step to contribute with this offense, not just as a running back, but as a playmaker. Travis Etienne, A.J. Dillon are also there. I think A.J. Dillon could be a sneaky guy in the red zone. His team had 9 rushing touchdowns in 2025. Like, they did not rush the ball or score in the red zone at a high rate at all. Maybe A.J. Dillon's that guy that anything 10 yards and in, they feel they can just kind of give it to him and he can barrel his way in. So keep an eye on that as well. Again, there's not like one guy you feel great about in this running back room, but there are some pieces here that when we talk about projecting, if Hubbard and Brooks can be good and Dillon effective in the red zone, now all of a sudden you have a good rushing attack for a team that last year, the only thing they did well was run the football. That's the only thing that they can hold their hat on, and they need to replicate that, especially when we get to their receiving core. McMillan was outstanding as a rookie, set a rookie record for receiving yards and touchdowns with Carolina, finished with just over 1,000 yards, 7 touchdowns. Finn touched on all that. He was awesome. It's kind of crazy for me, a Cowboy fan, to be thinking that, like, there's a world I thought he could make it to Dallas in that draft. He is as impactful as I think we all thought he was going to be, and that was just him as a rookie. Outside of McMillan, like we said before, there's a lot of projecting to do with this group. Jalen Coker has shown flashes, especially for a guy who was an undrafted rookie, but he's yet to play more than 11 games in a season. So if he plays 17 games, are we talking about a wide receiver who now, instead of, I think, it's been 478 yards his rookie year, 394 yards last year, 2 touchdowns and 3 touchdowns respectively in those 2 seasons. If he plays another 6 games, are we talking about a guy who's getting to close to 700, 800 yards, maybe 6 or 7 touchdowns? Is that now a serviceable number 2 to Tet? I think so, but he's got to stay healthy. He's not stayed healthy. And again, Finn touched on it. In that game against the Rams, I think that's the impact he can have on games. He just has to stay healthy. And then when we talk about, like, showing flashes, like, it doesn't get any more flashies than Xavier Legette. Like, there are games that he looks like a legitimate monster. This was a former first-round pick, albeit was taken with the 32nd overall pick. He's still a guy who went in the top 40 picks of a draft, and I think the Panthers had an idea that this guy could be a number 1. And when we talk about what he can do, there are times that this guy makes plays that you're like, yep, there it is. There's just no consistency to it. So when we look at this receiving core, you feel great about Tet. You have Jalen Coker, who, if he stays healthy, you probably feel good about. And if Legette can become more consistent, you feel good about. But again, there's a lot of if. And I just don't know if that makes you feel great with the quarterback that you have. There's excitement with Jimmy Horton Jr., who played at Colorado. I think they expected a little bit more than what they got out of him last year, and he's had a pretty good camp, and I think he played well in that preseason game. I didn't watch it, but I think he played well in that Hall of Fame game, so I think maybe they're hoping that he can sneak in to that top 3, but outside of that, it's just like, when you look at the depth chart, it's just a bunch of, like, undrafted guys, or it's a guy like John Mechie III, who at one point looked like he could be something. He was on the Jets, I think, a year ago, was not good with the Jets. Like, I just don't know if there's much there. And again, like, are they maybe a team looking for help in free agency to bring in a wide receiver? I would say no, because they haven't done it leading up to this. And they seem to want to give these young guys an opportunity. So you mentioned the tight ends. Tommy Tremble's a really good pass blocker. Jatavion Sanders has to be a better pass catcher, because if he doesn't, they have just zero productivity from this tight end room. And there's really nobody on the depth chart that you're looking at going, all right, well, that guy maybe can do it. The line is what I feel best about. And I'll kind of kick back on your point in that I think they have good tackle depth, because I don't know how many teams could lose their starting 2 tackles, and I would feel good about either one of these guys starting. Rasheed Walker is what he is. He wasn't great last year for the Packers, but he's a serviceable lineman who played 17 games last year, I think. So he at least comes in, you feel comfortable that can be a starter in this league. Aquanu is like a pretty solid left tackle, so I think it's just a matter of when he gets there. Motton is going to, I think, be ready by week 1. He's doing individual drills by himself right now. So I do think there's a scenario in which if Motton comes back, that Freeling actually kicks over to left tackle and plays instead of Walker. So I think the real battle is between Walker and Freeling. But I mentioned it before, there's been no talk of kicking Freeling in at guard. So if one of these guys need to start week 1, assuming Motton plays, I think the Panthers still feel okay about that. But with Freeling, there has to be a level of patience, like athletically. he's really, really good. As a pass blocker, he needs to be coached up. If he can be coached up, this guy's potential to be a top tackle in the NFL. But I don't know if he's going to get there by his rookie year. I think you feel okay about your two guards. Damon Lewis was their best offensive lineman last year. Robert Hunt was injured last year. If they can get him back and healthy, he was a Pro Bowler in 2024. It's easy to forget how impactful he was in Miami before he signed. So again, like when we're talking about projecting, I think Carolina sits here and goes, if Hunt can be healthy and we have Damian Lewis there, we feel good about our interior. Luke Fortner is like a swap for Cade Mays, in my opinion. Like it's just swapping one middle of the pack center for another middle of the pack center. And I think the guard play may be better than where Fortner was last year. Was he at? Where was he last year? Was he in Green Bay?
Saints.
In New Orleans. So I think maybe you're thinking with the two guys inside who are a little bit better, maybe that helps him. It's just a matter of getting the two, really getting Motton healthy. Because I think if you get Motton healthy and he can play week one, you feel good about whoever you're lining up on the left to at least hold their own. The pieces are in place to me up front to help protect the quarterback and run the football. Can Bryce Young and the offense do enough to create plays? Is there enough to make plays on offense, or is Bryce Young good enough to elevate some of these guys? That's the question I think all Panther fans are asking themselves right now.
This offensive line, if it's fully healthy, I think is one of the best offensive lines in football. I really like
agree
this
with you.
offensive line. It looks really good. I'm pretty confident they're going to be able to run the ball. Hubbard was really good 2 years ago. He was just kind of banged up last year. He had the calf injury that I think that slowed him down basically the whole season. And then hopefully Jonathan Brooks or AJ Dillon, one of those guys, can step in and be the RB2. Dude, this receiver depth chart, like, there's nothing outside of McMillan, who's coming off the good rookie year. You're right, so you're hopeful he'll even get a little better. Dude, there's nothing here. Like,
You don't think if Coker can play
no,
17 games, he can be a serviceable
no, I
number
don't
two?
think he's good at all. He had the one good game against the Rams.
He
He's the guy who's got to get going here.
I agree with you on Legette. Legette was a first-round pick. My only counter to that would be like Coker had almost 500 yards in his rookie year. Like that's good for like not good for number two.
That might,
but
if you know what it is, that's good for like number 3. I feel like
no, but my point is, if he plays 17 games, we're talking about a guy who's probably going to catch 700, 800 yards. That's a serviceable number two in the NFL.
Like, is this guy going to be a difference maker for them? I mean, you know what? I actually would be interested to hear from like Carolina Panther fans, right? Like, getting to the playoffs, like, what are the expectations? Like, is getting to the playoffs just good enough? And it's like, hey, we made the playoffs, and we won any games, but like, dude, let's be honest. Like, after Miami, is this the worst depth chart for wide receivers that we've seen? It probably is.
Probably on paper. I mean,
bad. On paper, yeah, it's bad, dude. Like, I just feel like this is Canales' 3rd year. This is Bryce Young's 4th year now?
Yeah.
Like, they didn't go out of their way to bring in another, like, I mean, it doesn't have to be like a veteran receiver, but like somebody else in here to help out. Not even just help out Bryce Young, help out McMillan on the other side of him.
That tells me that they're seeing something in practice from these guys that, like, they feel confident. You and I can disagree, or you can disagree, but I agree with you. If it's as bad as we think it is, why wouldn't you go get somebody? That leads me to
the thing is, I feel like the GM and the head coach have some leeway right now. That's what I think it is. Right? If these guys were feeling like the pressure being on the hot seat, I think there's probably some move that would have been made here to bring in a veteran receiver.
Maybe. I mean, you and I are going to disagree on Coker. I think this is a dude who can be a 700, 800 yard a season guy, and he may not be super impactful, but Ted had 1,000 yards with nobody next to him last year. How much better can Ted be if he has a dude who can, be a serviceable number 2 next?
I agree. I just don't think Jalen Coker's.
He may not be.
Anything.
He may not be. I'm just saying, if they haven't brought a guy in, I think they feel comfortable with what they have. Maybe that'll be the detriment to them. To your point on what do I think expectations are for Panthers fans, I think it's you got to win this division this year, but not like a wide margin, but you have to come in here and show everybody that the NFC South is our division now. Like, last year wasn't a fluke. Like, we went out, we signed money, we like our coach. Everybody's going to take a step this year. It's been the Bucs division for a couple of years. It's our division now. And if that's 9 wins, 10 wins, 11 wins, we'll get into that when we talk about their schedule. But they win this division, and I guess I'd say win it comfortable.
We'll see. All right, let's get into the defense on this team. So the Panthers
and for the record, I'm not saying that's going to happen. I'm just saying I think that's what Panther fans are hoping for. or what you're expecting. But sorry, defense, go.
So the Panthers defense was 16th in yards per game allowed last season with 327.2 yards per game. Passing yards allowed, they were 15th. Rushing yards allowed, they were 20th. Points per game allowed, they were 15th, giving up 22.4 per game. They accumulated only 30 sacks, which was tied for third worst in the league. They finished with a -2 turnover differential, recording 15 interceptions and 6 fumble recoveries. Right. So just reading off the numbers here statistically, offense and defense, very mediocre across the board. And what happened? That equated to 8 wins, folks. That's why they won 8-9 last year. Now, the Panthers defense under Edgero Evero run basically a 3-4 base. So at left defensive end is Derek Brown. He's one of the best all-around hand-in-the-dirt defensive linemen in the NFL. I personally loved him coming out of Auburn back in 2020. Been a really good player for the Panthers since he got here. Finished as the 13th best interior defensive lineman last year, but he can play on the edge too, on the interior. They can play him all over the line. Not necessarily a big sack numbers guy, but still very good as a pass rusher and solid in run defense. On the interior is Bobby Brown III, who plays the nose tackle position. He signed with the Panthers last offseason, coming over from the Rams. The Panthers could stand to get better here. The right defensive end is Tershawn Wharton, who, like Brown, the Panthers signed last offseason to a pretty good amount of money. And again, another defensive lineman that just was not good last season. He's currently on the PUP list right now in camp. Now, let's also remember they drafted Lee Hunter in the second round from this draft. I expect him to rotate in, and he might even end up playing the second most snaps on this defensive line behind Derek Brown. At the weak side linebacker position, so this was supposed to be Nick Scorton, who was entering his second season this year. He was a second-round pick in last year's draft. Unfortunately, he tore his ACL on the first day of camp, so starting in his place will be Patrick Jones, who was mainly a backup last season. Opposite of Jones on the strong side will be Jalen Phillips, who the Panthers signed to a 4-year, $120 million contract this offseason. He's coming off an okay season. Remember, he started with Miami, then they traded him to Philadelphia, where he finished the season. Hasn't really been the same player since he tore the Achilles back in 2024. And then in 2025, he had a knee injury too, but the Panthers are banking on him to be their lead pass rusher with all the money they gave to him. Princely Unamanian will also rotate in on both sides here. In the middle linebacker position, Devin Lloyd, who's coming off a phenomenal season with the Jaguars, in which he was named second-team All-Pro. Panthers gave him a 3-year, $45 million contract. If he replicates what he did in Jacksonville, Panthers are going to have one of the best overall linebackers in the league. He was phenomenal last year. Now, next to Lloyd is Trevin Wallace, who was a third-round pick for Carolina in 2024, was not very good last season. Isaiah Simmons, they re-signed him. He is on this team, the former first-round pick from the Cardinals back in 2020. Maybe he can push Wallace for the spot. It might be his last chance at really carving out a role for himself in the NFL. And now we get to the corner position. So J.C. Horn, entering his 6th season in Carolina, he's probably one of the most polarizing corners, I would say, in the league. Like the Panthers fans, of course, right? I mean, this is the guy who was drafted 1 pick before the Denver drafted Patrick Surtain. So it feels like every other year he's like really good, and then he's kind of mediocre, and then he did reel in 5 interceptions last season, but if you go off the metrics, his overall coverage was really nothing to write home about. Not a great tackler, didn't help out much in run defense. The Panthers liked him enough, though, last offseason to give him a 4-year, $100 million contract, which at the time made him the highest paid defensive back in the league. On his best day, though, he's still a top corner in this league. Now, opposite of Horn is Mike Jackson, who was really good last season. He rated as a top 5 corner in the league in pass coverage, and his run defense was really good too. Deflected 19 passes last season, which tied for the most in the league. Also reeled in 4 picks of his own. Nickelback is, so the guy's name is, it's Chau. Apparently it's pronounced Shaw. So Shaw Smith Wade. He was not very good last season. Depth here includes Robert Rochelle, Akulub Evans. Behind Horn and Jackson, I feel the depth chart is a big question here at corner. And then at safety, Nick Scott. He's been in the NFL since 2019, coming off his best season as a pro. He graded out as basically top 35 safety in pass coverage. His run defense could use improvement, though. Opposite of Scott is Trevon Moehrig. He was okay last season. He's more of a box safety, graded out okay against the run, not good against the pass. The depth at safety includes Zakee Wheatley and Lathan Ransom. How you feeling about this Panthers defense?
I mean, I would have felt a lot better about it if Scranton didn't get hurt, right?
Yes.
I mean, when we talk about the front three, Derek Brown, he headlines that front seven, right? When we talk about those three down defensive tackles, coming off an injury in 2024, played all 17 games last year, wasn't as impactful as he was in 23 or 22, but I think that we come to expect that for a dude coming off of a very serious injury. Was still one of their better guys inside. Next to him, Brown the third and Wharton, just neither were really good. Wharton especially is coming off of a neck injury. I think Brown the third is battling stuff as well. So both these guys are like not fully healthy. I expect Lee Hunter and Cam Jackson to get some run here. Cam Jackson was a 2025 fifth-round pick, and then Lee Hunter was their second-round pick, which I actually thought was pretty decent value. Again, a guy who, if this position had more value, probably would have went higher. So yeah, to Finn's point, I expect Lee Hunter to play quite a bit. Does that improve them inside? I don't know. Does a fully healthy Derek Brown improve them? Yes. I expect him to get back to close to what he was in 23 and 22. And maybe that helps the other guys on the inside. The pass rushing department, it's just there's no way to replace Nick Scranton. He led this team in sacks in 2025 as a rookie. Like, there was high expectations. And now I think this makes it even more difficult for a team that did not have a lot of sacks last year, and I think the goal was we're going to bring in Phillips to line up across from this young rookie, and we'll find ways to free up either one of those two or Derek Brown, or maybe it's Lee Hunter, and now it's like Patrick Jones III, who looked good before he got hurt. There's a lot of pressure on him to kind of be what I think they were hoping he was going to be. And the fact that they brought Jalen Phillips in, again, like when talking about them being comfortable in their wide receivers, maybe that's why they don't sign another wide receiver. I think it was telling that they went out and signed Jalen Phillips, despite having Patrick Jones on the roster and him starting a year ago. So it's going to be on Patrick Jones to step up. Like I said, before he got injured last year, he looked to be a solid player and a potential contributor, but they're going to need him to really step up, and they're going to need Jalen Phillips to step up. They paid him big money, and he just has not been as good as he was those first couple of years in Miami. Now, maybe the change of scenery is it. Maybe the scheme fit will be it. I don't know, but I would be a little weary of those two. I do wonder if, like, this is a team that calls up a Joey Bosa or a Von Miller, and they're like, hey, we need a pass rusher. Are you interested? I was looking at the free agent list today. I think, Hassan Reddick's on that list. Like, maybe Hassan Reddick. I know, but, like, when we're looking at what they have here, there's not a lot there. I don't feel great about this pass rush. So my guess is they look to bring somebody else in. Linebacker's another position that they felt they needed to upgrade this offseason. They did. Devin Lloyd was outstanding last year. It's probably the best season of his career. They're going to pair him next to Trevor Wallace, and Wallace was okay. Third-year linebacker, though, you put Devin Lloyd next to him, and you can really define what you want Trevor Wallace to do, while you have Devin Lloyd do virtually everything else. You hope that Wallace can improve from there. And then, the secondary, similar to the offensive line, the last position group I'm going to talk about that I probably feel best about. J.C. Horn and Mike Jackson are two really solid corners. Mike Jackson had a career season last year, both in pass coverage and as a run defender. They're hoping that continues this year. And J.C. Horn, while his numbers weren't great, is still an elite cover guy in man. When this guy's in man coverage, he's really good. So I'm curious if maybe the Panthers just try to work to his strengths a little bit. Not as good in zone, but when these two are playing at their best, like, this is a pretty good cornerback tandem. And you could do much worse. And then the safeties are two guys I feel complement each other very well. Although Morig didn't have the best year last year. Morig's great against the run. Nick Scott's probably a little bit better in coverage. You'll hope another year with these two, with those corners there. And that's like a solid two safeties and solid two corners. Nickel corner is the question mark on this team. I do wonder if Will Lee III can work his way in there. He had a really good Hall of Fame game. People like him out of camp. Can he maybe push Smith Wade for that position at nickel corner? But again, like, very similar to the offense, and maybe it's because of where the money's been spent. Some of these big money guys that they expect to be contributors just haven't worked out. You just don't feel like there's a ton of depth outside whoever the starters are, and you probably don't feel great about every starter, at least as listed in their depth chart.
Yeah, this defense, I think, could be pretty solid. Last year,
I
they
agree.
were basically anywhere from 16th to 20th. I feel like they could get back to that. I'm not sure where the pass rush is coming from here. Can Jalen Phillips even if Jalen Phillips can get you like 8 sacks, this team, I just don't know who else is going to contribute. I mean, Derek Brown might be good for 5 to 6, but over his career, he's not a big sack guy. I don't know where they're coming from. I
The
just
crazy
don't. And I like the corners. I like the corners, Horn and Jackson. I don't like any depth behind them. Devin Lloyd in the middle should help out. He's a really
yeah.
good player.
I think Devin Lloyd helps a lot because he can do a lot, right? So he can cover, he can find the football. Like he's going to naturally just make this defense better by the fact that he can cover up some of the other miscues. But to your point, if Jalen Phillips had 8 sacks, I think Panther fans would be thrilled with that. This team's leading sack getter was 5. But even if Phillips gets 8, like, can you put Phillips down for 8 and Derek Brown down for 6? And then where do the rest of the sacks come from? Jones the third had one decent season, right? Or am I thinking of somebody else?
Let's see.
Yeah, he had
Patrick
a
Jones.
7.
He
He had
had
a 7
7. Yeah.
with the Vikings. So like, can he get back to that? He had a sack last year in 4 games, I think, before he got hurt. So maybe we're just severely underrating him. And the Panthers, similar to their wide receivers, are like, we feel good about Jones. We wanted to bring Phillips in on top of him. And him, Scrouton, and Jones with Brown can be enough to get us up there with some other guys and blitz packages and stuff like that. Maybe.
Man, this Panthers team,
I expected to like it way more
yeah,
than I
so
did.
did I. And I just like, you know what it is? I don't know. Man, well, we'll get into it during our predictions. I don't know if they've gotten better since last season. That's kind of where I feel like I stand on them right now. I'll touch on the specialists and then we can get into the schedule. Ryan Fitzgerald's the kicker. He's entering his 2nd season in Carolina. They signed him as an undrafted free agent last season. Made 24-29 of his kicks, so he's pretty solid. Sam Martin was signed as the punter. He comes over from Buffalo, been in the league since 2013. Long snapper is J.J. Jansen. He's a man. He's 40. Still hanging around the league since 2008. Another Notre Dame guy, by the way. The Panthers special teams unit was pretty much like a bottom third of the league last season as well. So the Panthers, let's look at their schedule here as I pull it up. So the Panthers have 3 primetime games this season. They got a Sunday, a Monday, and a Thursday. Their bye week is week 5, very early bye here. So they open up versus the Bears, at the Falcons, at the Browns, versus the Lions, and then they get to their bye week. They end the season versus the Saints, versus the Bengals, at the Steelers, versus the Seahawks, and versus the Falcons. So 4 of their last 5 games are at home, which is really nice. If they're going to be in the mix competing for a playoff spot, at least they know at the end of the year, they got a lot of games at home. So maybe they would be able to take advantage of that. So looking over this Panthers team, I love their offensive line, dude. If these guys can get healthy, I really like this offensive line. I think they're going to be able to run the ball. I hate the receivers. Outside of McMillan, I'm not thrilled about it. The defense, I think, could be solid. If this team doesn't have a pass rush, though, I can't see the secondary. I can't see J.C. Horn and Mike Jackson just covering guys all day and sticking to these receivers like glue if they're getting no help up front. Even though Devin Lloyd will help out specifically in coverage. He's very good. Tom, I got this team 8-9 again because I don't think they're going to get any better unless Bryce Young takes a step up, shows why he was the number 1 overall pick, and he hooks up with your boy Coker and Xavier Legette, and McMillan takes another step. Otherwise, I just think it's another 7-10, 8-9 season for this Panthers team.
I have them 9-8. I have them squarely in the boat that you have them. I think this is a pretty difficult schedule. You know, you open with Chicago, at Atlanta, at Cleveland, home against Detroit, but your 2 most difficult games being at home. So maybe they go 2-2 over that stretch. If they're lucky, they go 3-1. Then I think the next middle part is really difficult. At Philly, home against Tampa, at Green Bay, home against Denver. At New England is still tricky. And then versus Baltimore, at Tampa, at Minnesota. Like that's a really tough stretch. Even if you don't think Tampa's going to be great or New Orleans is going to be great, those are still divisional games on the road. And who knows, we might look at those 2 teams and think they're better than Carolina. I do think the end of the season sets up pretty nicely for them. 4 of those games are home. Your toughest one, Seattle, is at home. Maybe Seattle has everything wrapped up by then, and they're watching guys to make sure. But I like New Orleans. Who knows what Cincy is by then? At Pittsburgh, but I think you'll feel okay about that one, and then home against Atlanta. But yeah, I found a hard time getting more than 9 wins, and I'm curious as we look at the rest of this division where I actually had them. Before doing this, I would have thought they would have been my favorite pretty comfortably, and now I'm like, I wouldn't be shocked if I look at somebody else and like them better.
Yeah, I'd be curious to hear from any Panthers fans out there. Well, obviously, there's Panther fans out there. Panther fans go to games. But I'd be interested to hear where Panther fans currently stand on Morgan and Canales, like what they actually feel about this staff. Like let's say this team does go 7-10, 8-9 again, and they miss the playoffs. Like, at what point is it we're just kind of on this same cycle that we've been on for years here? Yeah, we made the playoffs last year, but it didn't get us anywhere. We made the playoffs because the division was really weak. Like, if you're 7-10, 8-9, and you miss the playoffs again, like, I'd be curious to hear the thoughts if Canales is safe and this staff is safe to run it back a fourth year, knowing that they've yet to
The
go like
only
almost
reason I
100.
think the only reason I think they'd be safe is because the quarterback's gonna be on the final year of his rookie contract. So if you're gonna blow it up and do something different, you'll do it when you're fully convinced the quarterback isn't the guy.
Well, if they have another season like that, I don't think they'd be convinced that he's the guy. So you're going to go another year of
The
him
but
playing
but
on the fifth
but
year
the problem
option, I
is
guess.
if you're 8 and 9, you're not drafting high enough to get a quarterback.
Yeah, that's a good point. Well, I mean, hey, it's supposed to be a loaded quarterback class, right? There could be
Potentially,
like 6 guys
potentially.
that
I,
go.
I, I think Canales has 2 more years. I think last year was, if things go south, I think last year was massive. And who knows? We might look at the rest of this division and go, they're still better than most of these teams. I will say the Panther win total is 7.5, and the heavy betting favorite is the under.
Really? See, I think this team, I think they're better than a 5 or 6 win team.
I
I
think
just don't think that they have enough here to take
so.
another step.
So if we go through their schedule, and I said they could win 9 games, well, let's just play the devil's advocate and bet the under. If you're betting the under, you think they're losing to Chicago,
Yes.
probably Atlanta at Atlanta, Detroit at home, Philly at Philly, Green Bay at Green Bay, Denver, New Orleans at New Orleans, Baltimore, Tampa at Tampa, Minnesota. So that's 10 right there.
I mean, yeah, we're giving them a lot of losses on the road, but yeah, I guess that
Well,
would make sense.
if they aren't a good football team, they're not going to win on the road. Good football teams don't lose on the road. So if they're bad or not at the level that people think they're going to be, yeah, I could see that. I think they're a little bit better than that. I also think they're better than a lot of what's in this division, but we'll see. We still have 3 teams to preview.
Let us know, Panther fans. Let us know what your expectations are for this upcoming season. Thanks for hanging in the loft with us. The official Loft Sports podcast can be found wherever you consume your podcasts. Check out our website, loftsportsusa.com. Our next NFL preview episode will be on the Tampa Bay Buccaneers as we continue to preview the NFC South. Follow Loft Sports on X, YouTube, TikTok, Facebook, and Instagram. Follow us on all 5 social platforms. We are under at Loft Sports USA. Please rate and review us on whichever platform you listen to your podcast. Give us those 5 stars. Feel free to send questions, comments, feedback to loftsportsusa@gmail.com. We would love to hear from you. Thanks, everyone, for listening. We will talk to you soon.